In our reading from Joshua 6 to 10 last week, we saw the Lord accomplish many victories for Joshua and the armies of Israel. Over Jericho, over the city of Ai, over the armies of 5 combined kings, and many others. But now at the beginning of chapter 11, we see a much bigger obstacle. Not only 5 kings, but kings from all over the territory gather their armies against Israel, and it says the number of their soldiers is like the number of sand on the seashore. I feel like that sometimes. The Lord accomplishes great things in my life or in my ministry, and it enables me to trust Him more, to overcome the difficulties that will enable me to walk in the calling He has on my life. And at that time I feel so full of faith. But then it's all of a sudden as if every difficulty gathers together against me at one time, and it feels like this is way too big for me to handle. But the Lord can handle it. He's not moved at all. The size of even the biggest obstacle, the largest army, is nothing in the sight of God. So He told Joshua, yeah, there are a lot of soldiers, many of them, too many to count. But don't worry, at this time tomorrow, I'm going to deliver them all into your hand. And in that confidence, Joshua went into battle against armies that were much bigger and much more powerful than anything Joshua and Israel had to offer. And it says that Joshua didn't leave anything undone of everything that the Lord commanded him. And the Lord was faithful, as always, to keep His promises. Caleb moved forward in that same confidence. He's 85 years old, and he comes to Joshua and says, listen, I'm as strong as I was 40 years ago. Give me the hill country. Yeah, I know there are giants living there, but the Lord is with me, and He's going to enable me to overcome them. They walked with God. They were completely obedient to God. They trusted God to be faithful to keep His promises, and then they watched as God did amazing things. When I look at chapter 12 and I see this list of kings that Joshua and Israel defeated, it just looks like a bunch of names. But then I realized every one of these is a testimony of God's faithfulness. And it made me think about how one day we will enter into our promised land, the new heavens and the new earth. And we will live together in the Lord's presence forever. And we'll have an eternity to go through the long list of stories, to testify of the many victories that God won, that He gave us as we walked with Him together in His purposes, to love Him and to serve Him and to make His name and His love known throughout the nations of the world. And together then we'll just praise Him forever for His never-ending faithfulness. Then in chapter 13 of Joshua, he lists the boundaries of the promised land. And this just feels like a bunch of geographical stuff to go past. But then it reminded me that these pieces of land are the fulfillment of promises that God made to His people hundreds of years before then. It might have seemed like He was taking too long, but this shows that He was always being faithful, and now it was coming to pass. But the promise was never about the land anyways. It was about the one who promised to live there with His people in the midst of the land. And the priests, remember, they weren't given land at all. God says, you get me. I'm your portion. I'm your inheritance, and that's more than enough. And that's true for us as well. Revelation 1 verse 6 says that when we enter the promised land one day, He's going to make us a kingdom of priests forever. In other words, a people who have God as their inheritance, a people whose eyes are set fully on God, a people who serve God only, a people who know that God is their ultimate and complete treasure and reward.